Grace, mercy, and peace from God our Father and from our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. We all live under lots of pressure, lots of stress, every one of us. We have it in our lives. It may be financial, or we can't quite keep up with the bills that come in, or we can't quite live on that Social Security check that comes each month. There just isn't quite enough there. Or it may be some emotional stress that we live under, where we take on problems, not just our own, but other people's problems. Or it may be time pressure, where we just can't find the time for things that we need, or not enough time to do things. Or it may be spiritual pressures, stresses. At one time, the spiritual was pretty well focused on the local congregation that we belonged to, and that's where we were fed spiritually. But now there's websites galore, thousands of them, that are calling our attention to different things. And so there's that spiritual tension that we live under. Because of all this, because of all the stress and tension that we all live under, I thought it'd be good to do a 5-Sunday series of messages on that subject. And I've used Elijah as an example. You may wonder, why Elijah? Well, there's a verse in James 5, verse 17, that says this: Elijah was a human being, even as we are. Elijah was a human being, even as we are. In other words, he had the same stresses. In fact, he had more stresses, I would say. More pressure on him than any of us. And if you think that you have a lot of pressure or stress that you're living under, come the next 4 Sundays, and we will see how much pressure and stress Elijah had in his life, and how he coped with it. Elijah, as some of you may remember, was a man, a prophet from the Old Testament. He lived under the reign of King Ahab and Queen Jezebel. And as soon as I say King Ahab and Queen Jezebel, I think most of you know what was going on at that time in Israel. In fact, let's look at that. Let's start with that this morning. Let's look at the political background that Elijah was living in and the times that he was living in. We find this in 1 Kings chapter 16, beginning at verse 29 and going through verse 33. And this describes the times. This describes the culture that Elijah, the prophet, was living under. In the 38th year of Asa, king of Judah, Ahab, son of Omri, became king of Israel, and he reigned in Samaria over Israel 22 years. Ahab, son of Omri, did more evil in the eyes of the Lord than any of those before him. He not only considered it trivial to commit the sins of Jeroboam, son of Nebat, but he also married Jezebel, daughter of Ethbaal, king of the Sidonians, and began to serve Baal and worship him. He set up the altar for Baal in the temple of Baal that he built in Samaria. Ahab also made an Asherah pole and did more to arouse the anger of the Lord, the God of Israel, than did all the kings of Israel before him. So things looked like they looked prior to the flood. You know, in Genesis, when God looked upon what he had done, whom he had created, all he had done, he felt bad that he had made it all because things were so bad, things were so evil, that he had to destroy the world with the flood. This is the way it was at this time. False gods everywhere, false altars everywhere. People were bowing down before stone and asking stone to help them. They had forgotten God, the Almighty. They had forgotten who made them. They had forgotten all of that in these days. And so Elijah was led by God to be the prophet at this point in history. And he paid Ahab a visit, King Ahab. And that's the nature and work of a prophet, isn't it? To confront evil. And this is what Elijah was doing. So we turn now to chapter 17, verse 1. And this is going to be our text for today. Now Elijah the Tishbite from Tishbe in Gilead said to Ahab, "As the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, whom I serve, there will be neither dew nor rain in the next few years, except at my word." And you can well imagine King Ahab's reaction to all this. When the fruit trees began to dry up, when the wheat dried up, the barley dried up, when people became hungry, had no food to eat, guess who King Ahab went after? Since Elijah was the man who told him there'd be a famine in the land, King Ahab went after Elijah. He sent out a posse, in fact, to find Elijah and to bring him back. See, Elijah to King Ahab was a troublemaker. And what was Elijah to do? I mean, it was God who sent the famine. It was God who stopped the rain from coming to the crops. What was Elijah to do? He was caught between a rock and a hard place, wasn't he? That's where the stress came in. And besides that, what was Elijah supposed to eat and to drink? There was a famine in the land. He had nowhere to go. But God provided. God always provides for his people. And so we turn to verse 2, 3, and 4. Then the word of the Lord came to Elijah. "Leave here, turn eastward and hide in the Kerith ravine, east of the Jordan. You will drink from the brook, and I have directed the ravens to supply you with food there." So, how did God provide? God provided for Elijah a place of protection and a place of provision. Look at verse 5 and 6. So he did what the Lord had told him. He went to the Kerith ravine east of the Jordan and stayed there. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. So right in the middle of Elijah's distress, God acted. God came through for Elijah. And God delivered to Elijah the bread he needed, the water he needed. In fact, God gave Elijah a place of protection, a place of provision. First of all, he gave Elijah a natural provision, a brook, a stream of water to drink from. But he also provided Elijah supernatural provision. Ravens bringing in food in the morning, ravens bring in food at night. Now this is interesting. Ravens! Do you know what a raven is? It's a crow. It's a dirty animal. In fact, it was one of the unclean animals of the Old Testament. It's detestable. You know what ravens eat? You know what crows eat? That's what God used to provide for Elijah. Every morning the crows came, or the ravens. Ravens came. I looked up the difference between a raven and a crow. You know what the difference is? Not size, purely size. A raven has a wingspan of 50 inches. 50-inch wingspans. Ravens do. And they're black as well. They're black. But why would God use a raven to provide for Elijah? Every morning, every night. Why would God do that? I'll share with you 3 reasons why I think God chose this method of providing for Elijah. Number 1, Because God is in control. Okay, that's number one. I think God wanted to show that he could use a detestable raven to provide clean food for Elijah. Can you imagine a crow providing clean food for anyone? That's what God did. Because God has control. He has control over nature. I like the words of the text. I like the way the Bible puts this. It says, I have ordered the ravens to feed you. I have ordered the ravens to feed you. Notice the word, order. I'm going to give them the direction to feed you. I'm going to use the detestable raven, Elijah, to feed you, to prove that I have control over all things. Therefore, you don't have to have stress. You don't have to have tension in your life, because I'm in control. You know, we're studying the flood now in Bible study on Sunday mornings. In fact, this morning I'm going to show a DVD about what happened during the flood and how the flood changed the surface of the earth. But in the flood, you know, we often wonder, well, how did those animals all get on the ark? You know, 2 by 2, the Bible says they went on the ark. How could that happen? Well, God ordered it. He simply said to the animals, do it. And the animals did it because God is in control. Or then it says it rained 40 days and 40 nights. How could it do that? It doesn't even do that in Seattle, Washington. How could it do that? In this dry desert where Noah was building this ark. How could that happen? Because God ordered it. You see, God's in control. God created this universe. God created ravens. God can control ravens. God can use ravens even to provide food for Elijah. God's in control. And we need to realize that when we are under stress and pressure in our lives. We may not have control, but God has control because He's the Creator. That's number one. Number two, I think this is also true. God does His best when He's working with our weaknesses. Elijah was in a helpless situation. He had no control. He was caught between a rock and a hard place. There was a famine. There was no rain. Elijah couldn't control the rain. God could, but he couldn't. He had to live with the famine just like King Ahab lived with the famine. You see, but it's when we're humbled that God can use us. It's when we know that we're weak that we can find strength in God. You know, there's this great verse from 2 Corinthians 12. And this is the Apostle Paul. But let me read this one verse. This is 2 Corinthians 12:9. And the first part of the verse is God speaking to Paul. Because Paul had asked to be healed of his thorn in the flesh. Whatever that was. But he never was healed. Okay? So here's what God told Paul. My grace is all you need. My power works best in weakness. And now Paul writes this then, after this. Paul says, so now I'm glad to boast about my weaknesses so that the power of Christ can work through me. When we are weak and we know it, then we can be strong because of God, because He's in control. Little Minnie, I forget her last name, little Minnie was 5 years old, and she was paralyzed from the waist down. She had fallen, and because of that, she was paralyzed all of her life. But when she was a little girl, 5 years old, she was sitting in her wheelchair at home one day, and her father came home from the office. Her father came in and said, hi, Minnie. I brought a gift for your mom. Where's your mom at? And then he says, well, mommy's upstairs. And Dad says, well, I have a gift here to bring to her. And so little Minnie says, well, Daddy, let me carry the gift up to Mommy. Of course, Dad, knowing his daughter, said, well, Minnie, how can you carry it up to your daddy when you can't even walk yourself up the steps? And then little Minnie says, well, Daddy, give me the gift. I will carry it up, and you can carry me up the stairs. That's how it is. You see, when we know we're weak, when we know we can't carry the load, we let somebody who can carry the load for us, and that's God. God can carry every one of our stresses. God can carry every one of the pressures that we have in our life, if we just allow Him to. But as long as we think we have the control, that we can do it, then we will be crushed by it. But when we finally give up and say, I will let you carry it, Father. I will let you carry this stress for me, Father. Then He will. God does His best when He's working with our weaknesses, when we know our weaknesses. But there's also a third thing I think we can learn from the ravens, and that's this. God always works to feed our deeper needs. Our deeper needs. Food and water weren't Elijah's biggest need. It appeared as though it was. That was not his biggest need. He had a deeper need than that. You see, we sometimes think too that our physical needs are the biggest needs we have, but they're not. We sometimes think that if we have enough rent money for our house, or we make the monthly payments each month, that's good. Or we always think of our physical needs first, unfortunately. But we forget that we have deeper needs than our physical needs. I've often wondered about these ravens. What kind of food they really brought to Elijah. Now the Bible says they brought bread and meat. They didn't bring any chocolate. They didn't bring any veggies that we know of. Bread and meat. Every day. Twice a day. Now again, that's the other thing I think of. Why twice a day? Why didn't God just arrange it so the ravens came at noon? But no, the ravens came in the morning and evening, the Bible says. Twice a day. Why? I think the reason is that God knew that Elijah needed to trust Him for each one. Just like we say in the Lord's Prayer, give us this day our daily bread. Not for tomorrow, not even for tonight, maybe, but daily, now. And that's what God was doing. It's much like God feeding the Israelites the manna in the wilderness for 40 years, right? Every day. God did that. But with Elijah, it was twice a day, so that Elijah could trust God. Because that was his greatest need, was to trust the Lord. And that's our greatest need as well. Oh yeah, we are concerned about physical things. We need to be sometimes. But, where our food comes from, how we pay our monthly bills, we do need to be concerned. But much, much more is the spiritual part of our lives. Being able to trust God. And if we could just trust God and put ourselves into God's hands, what a difference it would make in our attitudes. What a difference it would make in how we act and and how we feel as well. You know, God told Elijah to go to this brook, to this ravine. It's called the Kerith Ravine. Kerith. That's where God would provide for him, both the water and the ravens and food, okay? Now, I've been to that area a number of times. That's in Jordan, country of Jordan. Now, we don't know exactly where that ravine was, but there are many dried up wadis. A wadi is a dried up riverbed, and there's many of them in that area. And any number of them could have been the Kerith Ravine. But do you know what the word Kerith Ravine means? Kerith means the safe place. The safe place. God had Elijah go to the safe place, to the Kerith Ravine, and that's where the water flowed. That's where he got his water. And that's where the ravens came to provide for him. Do you know where your safe place is? When there's stress and pressure in your life? Do you know where your Kerith Ravine is? Do you know where to go to get relief from your pressure and your stresses? You know where your Kerith Ravine is? It's Jesus. It's Jesus. You know, I've always really appreciated Psalm 32. Psalm 32 is a beautiful psalm. And in that psalm, verse 7 and 8 are these words. Let me read these words for you. They'll also be projected. This is verse 7, okay? This is verse 7 of Psalm 32. And this is a person speaking. This is David speaking. David wrote this psalm. This is David or a person speaking. And here's what that person is saying. You are my hiding place. You are my, I'll interject this, Kerith Ravine. You are my safe place. You will protect me from trouble and surround me with songs of deliverance. Now, that's what the person says. That's what David says, okay? Now here's what God says. That's the next verse. Verse 8. I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. With my loving eye on you. That's God speaking. That's the way it is. That's just the way it is. When you and I are in a pressure situation, in a stressful situation, and we say to God, you are my hiding place. You are my safe place. You are my Kerith Ravine. It's God then who says back to us these words, I will instruct you, and I will teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you with my loving eye on you. Jesus is our Kerith Ravine. Jesus is the one we go to when we are under pressure and stress. Jesus is our hiding place. Jesus is your hiding place. That's where you go to. That's where we go to when we are under stress and pressure. And God will see us through it. May God grant that to all of us. For Jesus' sake. Amen.